Nancy Pelosi departing yesterday for her trip to Asia, with all eyes waiting to see if the Speaker of the House makes a stop in Taiwan. And we're joined now to discuss the impact of this trip with the author of The Coming Collapse of China and great Asia expert, my friend there, Gordon Chang. Gordon, I have to get your reaction to the rhetoric, especially that's coming from China in the last day or so, even going so far as to say that if she enters and goes towards Taiwan, they might even shoot her plane down. That is very strong rhetoric. What's your reaction?
First of all, we heard the same things from Xi Jinping, according to the Chinese Foreign Ministry readout of their Thursday phone call, where Xi Jinping threatened to kill the president of the United States. I think President Biden should have hung up the phone then. But since he didn't, we heard on Friday even more rhetoric, including the tweet that you just mentioned from Hu Sui-jin, the journalist formerly at the Global Times. This is important because the Chinese now think that they can threaten to kill senior American leaders. And the United States needs to push back on that rhetoric alone. Instead, we got a tweet from President Biden talking about meaningful relationships, talking about deepening communication. This really is wrong. When a foreign leader threatens to kill the president of the United States and the Speaker of the House, we need to hear something from the president of the United States. We unfortunately heard the wrong things.
Yeah, I agree. And in fact, at first we just heard silence too, which was really interesting. When you hear this, how much of this is rhetoric? How much should we take these threats seriously? You know China so well, Gordon.
I wish I had the answer to that question, Rita. It is rhetoric, it is bluster, but I do think we need to take it seriously. And the reason is that although we're now focusing on Taiwan, we got to remember that yesterday there were 4 Chinese warships in Japanese territorial waters around the Senkaku Islands in the East China Sea. Yesterday, there were Chinese troops below the line of actual control, in other words, in India, in the Himalayas, in Ladakh. And also, China just last month provoked this horrible incident in the South China Sea at Second Thomas Shoal, where the United States actually had to threaten the use of force against China. So we know that Beijing is lashing out. You know, they could lash out at Pelosi and Taiwan, but really this is a symptom of something deeply wrong in the Chinese political system, as well as China's view that the United States is weak and that Beijing can do what it wants.
Why are we not hearing the U.S. side, the readout from the U.S. side of that call? Because we know that President Biden spoke with the president of China, what was it, 2 hours and 17 minutes. And we heard the China side right away. Why are we not getting more details from the U.S. side, Gordon?
I think that it's because largely the United States doesn't want to confront the reality of the hostility in China. The White House readout, which was about 2-3 paragraphs, was milquetoast. There was a background briefing at the State Department, which really didn't shed very much light on the nature of the conversation. And so I think that the United States needs to do a few things. You know, and there's some cleanup items, Rita, which are really important. So, for instance, the Chinese readout says that President Biden agreed to the one China principle. Well, no, we have a one China policy, which is very different from that. Yet we didn't hear the United States say what the difference was and to point that out to the world. And a lot of Americans are under a misapprehension about what our policy is, largely because we don't articulate it in public, especially when the Chinese go out of their way to misrepresent, basically lie about it.
Now, we know also that this got leaked out. It's very unusual that a possible trip to Taiwan would come out ahead of time. You know, normally they show up, these high-level officials show up, and suddenly they're in Afghanistan, or they're in Iraq, or they're in Taiwan. There's reports, and I think Mike Pompeo and Senator Tom Cotton have alluded that they think this might have come from the White House. Where do you think this leak came out? Because it is unusual. And what was the end goal? To thwart her, or to cause a controversy, to cause a schism?
Yeah, I don't think the leak came from the Speaker's office. It must have come somewhere within the administration, because we know that President Biden doesn't want her to go there. And what by leaking this, what the administration did really was to invite Beijing to issue even more threats. If you go back to Wednesday of last week when Biden said that the U.S. military was not in favor of her trip, China just ramped up the rhetoric because it understood there was disagreement inside the administration and that we were subject to intimidation. So, yes, the Chinese are intimidators, but Beijing opened the door and said, please, please threaten us more.
Yeah, boy, is that just a tenuous time. Now, what should Nancy Pelosi do, given all of these dynamics, Gordon, and obviously with these intense threats coming from China? Is it even more important than ever that she goes?
Absolutely. And this is not just a boys will be boys contest of wills. If she doesn't go, what she'll be doing is legitimizing and emboldening the worst elements in the Chinese political system by showing everybody else that intimidation tactics work, that threats to kill the president of the United States really do have some effect. So she has to go. If she doesn't go, it's basically Beijing is going to crow about how it is bossing the United States around. And this is going to have an effect not just in the region, but around the world, because Taiwan, after the debacles in Afghanistan and Ukraine, has become the test of American credibility.
Yeah, absolutely. And the world is watching 1,000%. Gordon, thank you so much for being here. You're the best in the business on this. Thank you very much.
Hey guys, it's Rob Carson. I want to tell you about the Patriot Gold Group. But first, let me tell you that the S&P has already lost $8.2 trillion in 2022. Did you know that? Peak inflation is not even hit despite the Fed rate hikes on groceries, on gas. You know it as well as I do. Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs are warning of another 20% drop. Inflation is winning in a knockout right now. The Fed is going to raise rates again at the end of July. Meanwhile, Goldman, Wells Fargo, and Bloomberg are all forecasting gold to surpass all-time highs. If you want to invest in gold, call 888-936-2373 now. Call the Patriot Gold Group today and ask about their no-fee-for-life IRA. Sounds like a good deal, don't it? Here's the number, 888-936-2373, 888-936-2373 for the Patriot Gold Group.